he or she has a role in the organization, we will not be able to effectively uh, evaluate their performance. And that's why in my in institutions where I have been holding the leadership position, whenever a faculty member joins on day one, first thing we tell him or her that this is the format in which you'll be assessed at the end of the year, because the family member must understand the role that he or she is expected. And in higher education system, in technical education system, the role of a faculty member is multidimensional. This, together with the transformational change in the learner paradigm, the kind of the millennials as we call them, the kind of people who are now coming, and a transformational change that has taken place in the process of education itself, focus shifting from teaching to learning, etc. And therefore all these issues that I'll be sharing, and since all the three things are intertwined, I've tried to link all of them in totality, and I'll be very happy if there are questions. Now, today is increasingly being recognized. In fact, it has an impact on current teachers' performance appraisal, that the learning is now increasingly being recognized as a democratic process. The wisdom lies in the group, and therefore collectivity of the students and teachers together are the real, learning, partners. And therefore, it's not a one-way process that a teacher transforms information and the learner receives it, vomits it out in the examination, gets a grade, and that's it. Today, the learning is increasingly being democratized, and therefore, as a result, the philosophical dimensions of education in current times, which would have a bearing on the performance appraisal system and the student feedback system, is democratizing the learning process, where you assume the wisdom lies in a group and people interacting amongst themselves. The kind of students have interaction in groups, group discussions, interaction with the teacher, and all are co-learners in the whole process. Education is a change agent, which is incubator of human aspirations. Education transforms a person, and therefore when we look at a teaching learning paradigm, the aim is not to simply transmit information. The aim is to transform personality, and therefore education should be seen as a change agent, which is an incubator of human aspirations to help in realizing the tremendous hidden potential that resides in all of us. Then people learn through collaborations. In fact, collaborative learning is increasingly becoming an important paradigm of the teaching learning process, and they need to pull what they need instead of being pushed into what they don't need. This has a tremendous impact in the way teacher behaves in the class. Instead of giving them something they don't need and push it down their unwilling throat, you need to tell them what they, and therefore basically if you can create an environment where we encourage them to ask intelligent questions, through the process of encouraging asking intelligent questions, they can pull out from a teacher what they really need instead of being pushed by what they don't need. Learning needs are specific to the individual. That's indeed a major challenge to the teaching learning process today, is that the learning is almost like a mass customization in a manufacturing system. Every individual learner's needs are different. The speed at which one learns is different. The skill gaps are different. And the socioeconomic environment from where one comes is different. The language, proficiencies are different, and hence flexibility of choice is an important dimension. Then, in fact, I often use the word, maybe to this might interest in this group. Earlier, a teacher was expected to just communicate some information or knowledge, and the students will take notes. And today's role of a teacher, and since I've been in IITN for the last 60 years, from an undergraduate student to the chairman now, in nutshell, the role specifications of a teacher is given in the acronym IIT. IIT involves involve, inspire, and transform. So therefore, primarily, and this indeed almost tells about the way we should get going, involve students, which means that the pedagogy of teaching learning process ought to be by involving them in groups, in discussions, in question answers, in small exercises, in project-based learning, etc., etc. Inspire. The inspirational role of a teacher is the most pronounced one compared to information giving, because if information giving was the main role of a teacher, as it used to be in the decades before the onset of Google, where a teacher would learn, transform in the class, and then today giving information is one of the very secondary role of a teacher. If information giving was the role of a teacher, Google will do it much better. Therefore, it's the inspirational role. So involve, inspire, and transform. Now, the word transform means that if I can, even a relatively weak student who comes to my class, if I can transform him and her to greater level of wisdom, my contribution as a teacher is much more than a person who was already outstanding and remains outstanding at the output level. And therefore, is the contribution that you make in transforming the students' input when they graduate in terms of the outcome of learning. And therefore, in acronym IIT, involve, inspire, and transform, an inspirational role of a teacher is what differentiates teaching in actual in-person from that learning from books or class notes or PPTs. Because the presence of a teacher in the class itself can be so inspiring, and the prerequisite for that is, and for that performance appraisal system ought to ensure that an uninspired teacher cannot inspire others. Therefore, since inspiring the students in the process of the transformation is one of the important roles of a teacher, the teacher himself or herself needs to be in the highly motivated and inspired state. Otherwise, an uninspired teacher is unlikely to perform the role that's expected. In addition to that, we need to create an environment where we can encourage students to ask absolutely out-of-box questions, out-of-box thinking beyond the box, thinking beyond the structured process. So out-of-box thinking and inspiring creativity. In the process, the university needs to reform, transform, perform. And more important thing is the outcome. What is it that people do? You see, earlier giving information and knowledge, but what do we do with that information and knowledge is more important, is trying to use the knowledge that one learns in technical education system for the good of the society. And the application of that knowledge, which means three things are important: attitude, knowledge, and skill. And another important characteristics that the current teaching paradigm should, you create an environment where learning to learn. That means capacity to enormous curiosity amongst the students to generate and if you can create that, these two important things, encourage them to ask intelligent questions. And if you are not able to answer it, I don't expect a single teacher to know everything. But if somebody asks an intelligent question, we can collectively find an intelligent answer. And therefore, that capacity to encourage students to ask intelligent questions, think out of the box, and create a desire, curiosity, learning to learn. And the last important transformational change, the paradigm in the teaching learning process is our focus should be on employability and not on employment. So when we are training people in the classroom, it's not for filling the statistics of the percentage placement. It should be the employability. Because I believe that the objective of any teacher should to enhance the employability of the student so that he can get an employment, because employability is the capacity or capability in a student in terms of the integrated knowledge that one attitude, knowledge, and skill together. And if you are employable, you will get the employment. But if you get the employment are not employable, you may not be able to hold on to that employment for long. And therefore, the major paradigm shift in educational system should be, don't focus on percentage placements. Unfortunately, most of the educational institutes seems to be obsessed with showing the placement statistics. In fact, you should show the gain in the employability of your students that you have it. And for that purpose, in fact, employability is a multidimensional concept. It comprises of three important attitude, knowledge, and skill. Now, knowledge is mostly predominantly focused in our current teaching processes. Knowledge is what we give in the classroom. But knowledge and skill The skill is the capacity to use that knowledge to solve the problems of the society. And all this multiplied by attitude. You can see in this model, attitude is a critical success factor, and unfortunately, we do not emphasize this in the teaching learning processes that we have. To me, an extremely intelligent and skilled person who is highly negative in perception by others is not employable. And therefore, it's the positive attitude, value education, and that's what the AICT has almost focused on. Value education is an important component, which indeed I had introduced when I was the Vice Chancellor of UP Technical University, as a compulsory audit course on human values and personality, because in addition to knowledge and skill, a teacher is expected to develop a positive attitude. Once again, why I'm saying this? Because you can't develop a positive attitude in students if you yourself are not positive. And therefore, because of the our focus in teaching has to be not on simply transmitting information or knowledge. It is a complete mix, an appropriate integration with a weighted combination of knowledge, skill, and attitude. Therefore, if we compare the role of conventional teacher to the current times, current traditional education paradigm has to be now done away with. And since many of us belong to the older generation, I'm raising this issue to say, perhaps because that paradigm must go. Conventional traditional educational paradigm used to be that the learning is hard. Many people, it's a very difficult process, tedious process. In fact, learning has to be made as fun. You make the teaching learning process in such an interesting way that a student looks forward to coming to the class instead of being forced to attend classes. Because this traditional paradigm that learning is hard, learning is based on a deficit model of the student. The system strives to identify deficiencies and weaknesses in student, and then learning is a process of information transfer and reception. I transfer information as a teacher, the student receives information as a receiver, and this kind of current learning enterprise remains information oriented. This needs to go. And obviously, unless you tell your teachers that this is not the way you are going to be assessed, your faculty performance appraisal system obviously ought to be again based on the new paradigm and not on the conventional paradigm. If you assume learning is a process, you attended, you delivered lecture, tick, you covered the units of coursework, tick, you completed examination, grades given, job done. That's an outdated paradigm in teaching learning process. And therefore, assuming that process of learning is simply teaching, simply a process transfer of information. Learning is an individual or solitary process. No. You say learning is an individual goal. No. People learn maximum in groups, working together and involving themselves in projects. And therefore, as a result, now the learning is also by breaking content in instructions. Now, for example, that's how we design a coursework. The entire course is converted into units, modules, and structured into lecture 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. And assuming learning is a linear process, sequentially, frequently, teacher or textbook provides only one linear path. Lecture 1, lecture 2. Now, all this is a traditional view of learning. Now, the current, and of course, this is very clearly mentioned in the red list, not to indicate that traditional lecture method has lost meaning. It has a value, but then we need to blend with it a modern view of teaching learning process. In addition to this, therefore, as a result, the changing paradigm of the teaching, and this is important for the current teaching professionals to know this. Today, the teaching learning process, the focus is from teaching to learning. Teaching must give into learning, because I may teach. Teach is only input. Learning is output. And therefore, as a result, based on the current last few decades of focus on educational processes, this is the current paradigm. Learning is a natural process. So instead of assuming people hate to learn, learning is a natural process. Learning is a social process. People learn in groups. Learning may either be linear or non-linear. Therefore, in fact, it doesn't have to be sequentially structured. Learning can be concurrent, linear, non-linear. Learning integrative and contextualized. In fact, the context in which you're working, for example, in the the kind of topics that you have, the subject that you have, In fact, teaching learning process in maybe in social sciences may be very different from that of the engineering, and so on. And it has to be in a context, in a country specific. So learning is integrative and contextualized. Learning is assessed through task completion, products and real problem solving of both individuals and groups, and therefore the process of assessment of student. Now you give an examination and score and convert the marks into grades, and that's it. In fact, the process of assessment of the teaching learning process in current paradigm is to giving them task and evaluate their task completion, uh, asking them to design a product or even produce it, real life problem solving both at the individual and group level. This is how and therefore a faculty member in the higher education has two major role spaces, which is important because many times we ignore the other role. One is to sharing the existing knowledge, that's the teaching, and the other one is to knowledge for innovation, creating a new knowledge or converting the knowledge into products and systems. Both these are important for faculty member, and therefore today's faculty role, which would have an impact on his performance appraisal system, is to enable faculty members to do some or all of these following. These are verbs, as you can see, and therefore it's the job of the academic leadership of the organization so that the faculty is able to achieve to do that. For example, the faculty member is expected to achieve some or all of these issues. Of all of them, of course, a very outstanding is supposed to lead, inspire, coach, facilitate, create a vision, question, enable, empower, evoke, support, share the vision, listening to the students itself is an important aspect. Educate is acting as a resource, guide, encourage, and present as a role model. As I mentioned, that the very presence of a role model teacher in a class makes a tremendous intangible impact on the transformation process of the student's profile. And create content, produce new textbooks. All these are the expected roles, and all these would have a component in the faculty performance appraisal system. As I mentioned in the beginning, all these are intertwined, and it's the role of the academic leadership of the institution to facilitate faculty members, to develop faculty members so that they're able to achieve these jobs. And therefore, in the process of assessment, we need to, faculty performance assessment has to be very comprehensive assessment of performance, utilizing multiple sources of evidence and reflective self-reporting, which means that simply conventional annual confidential report, ACR, that we used to call, I don't know whether some institutions still have them, is totally outdated. Annual confidential report is an outdated concept. In fact, annual performance has to be so objective and participative in process and so comprehensive, multidimensional. Doesn't have to be confidential. If you keep it confidential, the purpose is lost. This applies both to faculty performance appraisal system as well as the student feedback, because many times I have in fact been, while interviewing candidates for faculty positions, I realized they say we have a faculty student feedback system, but they don't share with the student, with the faculty. What's the purpose of having a student feedback system is not shared with the faculty concerned? So therefore, any performance appraisal system must be comprehensive, multidimensional, objective, measurable, and reflective, self-reporting, involving the person, and should not be confidential. It should be known. You know the strength and weakness of people. Significant involvement of peers in the review process, an opportunity for collective departmental perspectives, establishment of professional goals and career direction. In fact, it's very important for a faculty member to know what are likely to be the future professional career growth, and provision of meaningful feedback and opportunity for improvement. Giving a mid-semester feedback and opportunity for improvement. The purpose of faculty performance appraisal system should not be punitive in nature. The idea is not to punish people. The idea is to nurture them, to improve them, and give them timely feedback, identify the gaps, and therefore much of the performance appraisal system, which I'm going to share with you, which has been implemented at IIT Roorkee. In fact, when I was Deputy Director of Faculty at IIT Delhi, we started there, It was almost completed when I was in Roorkee, and in my current universities, we have been linked it performance appraisal with follow up. How do we compensate people for people who are doing outstanding performance? I'll be sharing some of my. Therefore, now, in fact, one of the ways that when you look at a faculty member's performance appraisal, this is a kind of a group them into four kind of categories. These are faculty members. Some of you may be doing a very highly scholar work, very outstanding people, doing a great quality research. But this does not have any compatibility with the mission of the university. You're doing something that's not very relevant or does not fall in touch with is not compatible with the. So you're doing an outstanding work, but it's mismatched with the current focus of the university. That there could be some people. There could be people who are neither doing a great work, nor is not even tuned with the university. We call it unskilled mismatch. Unskilled match is person who may be doing a very low quality work, but very relevant to the university's mission. Is very matching to the profile, contributing to the mission accomplishment, although slightly low in caliber. And C would be effective. Not only you are doing a great work, you are doing it relevant to the compatible to the mission of the university, and therefore, after the performance appraisal system, we need to look at where do we fit in an individual faculty member, where our goal should be to develop people towards C, effective match. Not only they be encouraged to develop outstanding quality work, but it should be in tune with the mission of the university. And therefore, depending upon the example, if you are in A, then a very serious interventional strategies are required to develop a faculty member. If you are in B, continue what you are doing well, but set explicit expectations for new areas. So you're okay. You're doing a great job, but it's not tuned with what we wish you to be. Just reorient your direction, but continue to do what you're doing. If you're in C, you ought to be recognized, appreciated, and maybe worshipped. Outstanding teacher ought to be followed up with rewards and new opportunities. And if you're in D category, doing good job, but not very going very relevant, but not highly. Well, this is where faculty development. So D calls for a focus on developing faculty member to enrich their skills. C calls for rewarding them, honoring them, respecting them. B calls for tolerating them, but gradually telling them to reoriented directions. And unskilled mismatch, perhaps you need to know whether you need to live with them. And therefore, the strategies now with this, maybe what I'll now share with you, the faculty performance appraisal system that I initially started in IIT Roorkee, and more detailed I'll show later on when now it's a known fact that a faculty performance appraisal has to be multidimensional, and therefore the characteristics are these are measurable, multidimensional, measurable, weighted focus on priorities, participative in nature, involving self-assessment, and therefore it is almost something like industry calls as 360-degree performance appraisal system, where multiple stakeholders, and therefore the structure that we started in IIT Roorkee, and now a more detailed format I'll share with you, which is currently being followed in my current university. Therefore, what we do, we divide the role of a teacher for the purpose of performance appraisal into 5 categories. Each category can be measured on a 5-point Likert scale from low to high. As you know, in 5-point Likert scale, the performance can be taken into based on the database on 5 from low to high, and the 5 point. If you are ticked as low, you get 1 point. If you get performances high on that factor, you get 5 points. Then and so on and so forth. So it's easier for a collective people to place a faculty performance on a 5-point Likert scale as the perception, and therefore based on that, these are 5 important modules of performance that's expected from a faculty member. This is teaching. Obviously, most dominant component is teaching. And just for the sake of illustration, I'm telling you, may give highest weightage to it, 45%. But then role of a teacher is not simply teaching in higher education. This is what differentiates school education from higher education. So your role of teaching is, let's say, 45% weightage is given. Academic research, the way the PhD guidance, the research publications, guiding MTech thesis, PhD thesis, academic publications, research citations, all that goes with it, 20% weightage. Sponsored research and consulting is also the job of outreach. I must continue to solve the problems of the society by way of either sponsored research and consulting, 15% weightage. Academic management, you are lab in charge, you are store in charge, you are timetable in charge, you are head of the department, you are a dean, you are a director, you are a principal. Academic management. And the last factor here is recognition by your peers and honors and rewards. It's a uh, kind of a reconfirmation of what you're doing. Has somebody got your best paper award? You are an editor of a top-notch journal. You got the best paper award. You got a best teacher award, etc., etc., etc. Recognition by others, peer assessment is just So therefore, what happens? Now each one of these requires a focus. For example, 45% weightage that give to teaching, the various constituent, and therefore what we do normally, fill up a detailed form. I'll give you the format that we later on use in current university, which gives you the hours of engagement, how many lecture hours, how many lectures, practical, laboratory. So the hours of engagement, the learning effectiveness, how effective is the teaching learning process, student feedback, laboratory development, learning resource development. Have you written textbooks? Have you then guiding BTech and MTech projects? Now here, BTech and MTech projects guided is counted as teaching part. PhD guidance is counted in academic research, and therefore, based on the total number of LTP, lecture, tutorial, practical hours of engagement, the learning effectiveness, the student feedback, laboratory development, learning resource development, and guidance of the projects both at BTech and MTech level are some of the informational input that together will decide your teaching performance, and 45% weightage given to that. Then academic research, which have 20% weightage, number of journal papers, quality of those papers, which is sometimes cited through number of citations, your H index, G index, I-10 index, the total number of citations, number of PhD theses guided by you, and the number of conference papers. Generally, conference papers are given a relatively lower weightage compared to the journal publications because many times even a semi-baked idea gets accepted in a conference. Of course, give some weightage, but later on I'll tell you how we do that. Then the third component is sponsored research and consulting. The value of the project, the value of consultancy, the value of MDP, Management Development Program, continuing education program, the number of conferences organized, and therefore this part of the faculty member would deal with, are you able to get a sponsored research funding from government and private sources? What is the value of that project? How many projects, consultancy project, what's the value of that consultancy project? How many management development programs or executive development programs or continuing education programs or faculty development programs, FDP? So MDP, CEP, EDP, FDP, all depends upon the kind of people being trained, FDPs, MDPs, and the value, and the number of conferences organized. All these are the data input that together will determine the performance of that faculty member on this sponsored research and consulting. The fourth parameter, your contribution in academic management at the departmental level and also at the university level. As you know that in the multi-departmental university system, a faculty member is involved at the university level, maybe involved at the departmental level, and therefore based on your management inputs in terms of academic administration, since you devote time and effort in doing that, even that ought to get recognized. And finally, the honors and peer recognition. This is how it's done. Now, it's a typical example just to illustrate what we do. Suppose it's a hypothetical case. As on a 5-point Likert scale, And I find it's a very relatively very popular way. It's easier for a faculty member to be assessed on the perception rating on from low to high, high, very good, good, satisfactory, and low. Even low gets 1 point. Now, therefore, H is high level performance and L is low level performance. H gets 5 points. Now, suppose a typical faculty member being assessed by the group. Later, the structure of the process I'll talk about. The collective wisdom puts this faculty member on teaching front to be very good, and academic research to be satisfactory, the sponsored research and consulting to be low, academic management to be high, and honors and peer recognition awards to be satisfactory. Fairly reflective of the many faculty members, good teachers in engineering colleges who are not very high on research and sponsored research. And therefore, suppose this is the response that you get, then gets converted into score based on 5-point Likert scale. Obviously, the perfect score would be 5, which nobody can get. On teaching, very good is 4 multiplied by the weightage 0.45. So 4 multiplied by 0.45 is 1.8. Academic research, satisfactory performance, 2 multiplied by 0.2, 0.4. Sponsored research, satisfactory, just 1 point, multiplied by 0.15, 0.15. Academic management is doing extremely well. He's an outstanding HOD. He's outstanding, whatever role he gives, a great coordinator of timetables, or is a great controller of examination, or whatever title you give. Outstanding performance on academic management. H is 5, but the weightage you give to that is 1.15 is 75. And honors and recognitions is satisfactory. So the overall faculty weighted performance appraisal score on a 5-point scale would be 3.2. And later on we would see how do we interpret that. Now this is how we interpret that. And this is how actually I implemented it. I will share with you. This is how I evolved this method at IIT Roorkee. Of course, at Roorkee, we did not give teaching 45% weightage or research. There, 35% weightage to teaching, 30% weightage to research, because in IT system. So this is not for IT system; it's for a conventional college such as yours that we're doing. So if your focus, if you get a score of overall score of 4 and above, to get a score of 4 and above on a 5-point scale is not an easy job. I used to call them star performers. They're outstanding people. They need to be honored, need to be recognized. The score is between 3.5 and less than 4 is very good, need to be appreciated. The score is between 3.5 to 3 is good. Less than 3, but more than 2.5 is acceptable, satisfactory. But an overall score of less than 2.5 is unacceptable. And therefore, what do we do with it then? I'll show you. And this very important part is meant for more the heads of the institution more than that. Because what happened, and this is the actual experience I'm sharing with you of what I did in Roorkee. And that almost led to a almost 100% satisfaction and 100% participation right from professors to lecturers. It's not an easy thing for a faculty member to submit for performance appraisal, that too in a multi-dimensional 360 degree. But the way you implement this also is an important thing. The process of implementation is as important as the intention. So suppose somebody who scored, first let me tell you the process. The process was involving everyone. So we designed a detailed form where the faculty member himself enters the data. That's because we need to assess him on facts. So how many courses he taught, what the student feedback, etc., papers published, conferences, journals. So the process begins with the self-assessment involving the faculty. So faculty member concerned is an important participant in the process of performance appraisal. So it's not a black box, it's totally transparent. Then it goes to the HOD, and in Roorkee, the HOD's role was simply to verify that the data submitted is factual. Instead of giving conventional, oh, he is cooperative, non-cooperative, etc., because that's it. If a person is performing outstandingly well, his students are happy, he's publishing good papers, he's teaching very well, by definition is supposed to be cooperative. Therefore, the whims and fancy of the HOD don't need to play a role. There he has to simply verify that the data submitted by the faculty concerned is factual. That's it. And later on, he'll be part of the process. Collective wisdom would prevail when we give perception. Then it used to go to 5-member team comprising of chairman by the director, the dean faculty, the HOD, and 2 senior persons known to be great performers and known to be very fair and honest in their assessment of people. I mean, their value system. These 5 people together would look at the performance data and based on the model that I talked about, they'll be put into these points. But then what do we do? Being a government institution, I cannot give them any financial compensation. That's a vidamna. I mean, you might see that, for example, all that I've done in life, I have never got a single merit increment by IIT Delhi, because our system is such that nobody is denied an increment and nobody gets a merit increment, which of course I've improved in my system, I'll show you. So I couldn't have given them star performance. So what do I do my star performers? I did something. First, if a person is able to get a 4 point out of 5 on multidimensional weighted score of the model that I talked about, we share the score, and as a star performer, I'll write as an individual a tremendously inspiring letter, personal letter, so beautifully that the person would be put on the top of the world. He will feel great that somebody is recognizing merit. In the monthly, in the newsletter, all these people would be, their photographs would be put, and say these are our stars. In addition, what I did, which indeed made a game changer, since I couldn't have given them increment, all those star performers were invited for a dinner at the director's lodge with their spouse. Now, this is called positive motivation in the language of motivation theory. If somebody is doing extremely well, nobody stops me from honoring them or respecting them. When this invitation went to these people, the neighbor's wife, this was a residential institution, asking, "Oh, directors invited us for a dinner in his house with his spouse. Aapke ghar bhi, have you also received it?" No, we didn't get any invitation. Now, this is what the message we wish to give. Since you are outstanding performer, somebody is watching you. The neighbor who was not able to contribute gets positively differentiated. And he can't blame, because I have not been called for dinner because you're not performing. And therefore, small gestures of this kind of honoring recognition, and of course, this performance data would be recorded in your annual report, so that when it comes to promotion, when somebody is outstandingly star performer for years together, obviously he becomes associate professor, he becomes a professor, he becomes HOD. So when it comes to chance of promoting them, their continuous performance record would be used for the purpose of promoting them to higher responsibility. So that's how you nurture your academic leadership team based on the track record of outstanding performance, all being in the objective criterion in a transparent manner. But then the moot question is, what do we do with those people who are in the E category? Unacceptable, less than 2.5. There indeed was a case when somebody was only 1.3, 1.83. I can't imagine IIT Roorkee as a faculty member. It's a transformation from University of Roorkee into IIT. So somebody scores 1.9, let's say. What do we do with them? This is where perhaps the institutional heads have to understand. Of course, in the government setup, I'm talking of, in private setup, maybe you have slightly more opportunity. But as I said, the performance appraisal is not meant for punishing people, but to inspiring them, for developing them, nurturing them. So for those people whose score was unacceptable, my personal value system is, I do not threaten people, I do not punish them, I do not send memos to them. So what I did, just factually reported to them, okay, dear Professor such and such, the annual score of your faculty performance appraisal system, which is based on multidimensional, is, let's say, 2.3. As the head of the institution, I'll be very delighted to help you in develop you, nurture you in case you need some help from us. And please feel free to get in touch with us without any hesitation if we can be of some help to you. That's it. No question of threatening, oh, you lose this, you'll do, because you know that there is no point wasting your time on negative pursuit. Because if I had started threatening people who are non-performers, first thing they'll do, they'll say this performance appraisal system outdated, useless, biased, do away with it. It's called positive motivation. Encourage people who are doing well, and just inform those who are not performing so well, give them an opportunity to develop, help them in case they may need to see. And this makes a difference. I'm telling you about in the first year when I implemented this, out of a faculty strength of nearly 450 or so, there were 44 star performers. The number went next year, it became 66. And number later on when I left, it was about 90 star performance, which means that the same people, the number of faculty members developed increased is not so much. If you're able to nurture more and more stars out of, because everybody has a star hidden in him or her, it's the role of a leadership of the institution to get that star to shine. And the role of performance appraisal system should be that it helps you for that star to, a hidden star in each one of us, a latent potential that exists in each one of us. And this can be done by following a positive motivation in appreciating, honoring, recognizing, whether financial or non-financial manner, your stars, and develop a database of such stars, get them the opportunity to get higher scores, when they for promotions. So if you are consistently a star for last 5 years, you ought to get a promotion. And when it comes to choice of making HODs or deans or whatever, you can use the data. This is how I used it. And then this is the structure of the model that I am follow. I'm just giving you in my my current institution. I have developed that model of Roorkee model to a much greater, for example, this is a detailed format, which I am, in fact, as I mentioned, currently is being followed yesterday, and we have enriched this further. What we have done in this model, in Roorkee, we did not used to invite the faculty member to come to the committee. In this case, the process is that using this format that I'm going to just flip through, a faculty member fills in his or her contribution for the year in all multi-dimensions that are in fact to be more detailed out. Then HOD, here perhaps the HOD's role has been made slightly more involved, because in a private institution, perhaps in IIT, almost HOD is one of the professors. So therefore, here the difference is there. So maybe slightly more involved role. And these people then come before the central assessment committee, which comprises of pro-chancellor, that's myself, the vice chancellor, two members of the governing body, the HOD concerned, so that all stakeholders are there. And this faculty member then presents for half an hour his or her case. Once in a year, at least, top management of the institution gets to personally talk to the faculty member concerned. And if there are any issues and problems one is facing, and this multi-dimensional layers of performance, if the HOD's performance appraisal and the committee's perception are different, then perhaps the bias component will come down, and we take the average of 5 people independently give their assessment, and then the average is taken and a final grade is given. And the follow-up here is based on the grading that I'll show you later on. Here I can afford to give them financial incentive. In Roorkee I couldn't, so I could only appreciate them, put them on the top of the world, at best call them for dinner with a spouse at my house. But here we give financial compensation. The pay raise takes place, because in a private university setup, it's possible for you to give a differential pay rise in addition to same 3% to everyone, which in government institutions. So this is the process. So I'll now share you very quickly. Of course, the initial individual name, department designation, date of birth, date of joining, and qualifications. Since there are some faculty members who are non-PhDs too, so therefore, if a person is not a PhD, if you are PhD, you'll write that. But if you are PhD, then you give the status. And when are you going to complete it? So the idea is to slightly nudge them to complete their PhD work. Then we also put a score of last 3 years appraisal, so that we know whether the person concerned, because the whole purpose of faculty performance appraisal is to improve the faculty member, and therefore we put all the previous score and see whether the person is going up or going down, and if the reasons of going down need to be looked at it. So therefore, then the leave record is taken, complete leave, casual leave, earned leave, special casual leave, medical leave, vacation leave, leave without pay, any other total leave. And the purpose of this was that there are people, and that we came across, that people don't even consume their casual leave. They're so sincerely devoted to the institution. The people who count their every half a leave and ensure that full entire quota of leave is fully taken. Indirectly, it reflects about the people who take even huge number of leave without pay. So perhaps this data also helps us. Now comes to specifically all those parameters given. Teaching commitment. I don't call it teaching load. I call it teaching commitment, and the reason is very psychological. If you consider something as a load, you don't enjoy it. You try to reduce that load, try to throw it out as a burden. But if you consider something as a commitment, so the term used in my context is not teaching load, but teaching commitment. So their teaching commitment is, these are filled up by the faculty member concerned. Let's say odd semester, we call it July to December. Courses taught, class a branch semester. Strength is class, because somebody is teaching a class of 10 students. Somebody is teaching a class of 100 students. There is a marginal difference in the way that efforts involved. So the strength of the class, periods taken per week in lecture, tutorials, practical. Then there is another very important parameter. It's called GAAP. Not very common term. I just developed this concept when I was vice chancellor UP Technical. It's a gross academic attainment per student. What it indicates? See, normally a teacher spends time only on very brilliant student, ignores the poor. So in fact, it's a gross academic average academic attainment performance, gross average academic performance. So the total score of all the students in that class divided by the total number of students in the class is GAAP. So that the overall outcome of the learning of the class as a whole has gone up or gone down. It makes a difference. So the teacher needs to spend time across the entire class, and this model has worked very well. And then the student feedback, which is known in our system of student feedback that I will be sharing with you. It works. So the teacher gives this information, then total periods per week, total credits per week. As you know, lecture, tutorial, practical have different credits. 1 hour lecture per week is 1 credit, 2 hours of practical per week is 1 credit, and so on and so forth. So total credit, this is the information that a faculty member gives you each semester. Then the score begins. The appraiser in this case, for a non-professor, the appraiser is HOD initially and later on the committee. The student feedback. So we'll say what is the average faculty student feedback and what is the average of the university, so that you are able to benchmark. If the average student feedback of the university is 83%, let's say, and this fellow is 93 or 73, you're able to benchmark. And that's why these statistics are given: average university feedback, highest is lowest, and the average, and the feedback of this faculty concerned, the score out of 7. Similarly, overall teaching commitment, number of courses taught, teaching load, student strength, diversity of course. Whether you taught same course 3 sections or you taught 3 different courses, it brings in diversity. Any course selected for experiential learning with 10% syllabus by industry experts, the people involved in industry. Then list of other major UG, PG projects guided by you, mention batch size. Mention if any of the project got selected for Technovation Best BTech Project Award. For example, the BTech, you got the Best Technovation Project Award. It should reflect in your performance appraisal. List of the techniques, methods used, expert lectures relevant to courses, student visit to industrial industries, mini projects to validate concepts or case studies, surveys, linking co-curricular activities to the courses applicable, supplementary online courses, MOOCs courses, blended learning. All these are used for any innovative process used in teaching learning processes. Remedial classes taken. Then the fifth factor is independent assignments, quizzes, evaluation of class efforts by the students, quizzes and for GATE, CAT, third-party domain test level self-development. For example, what efforts faculty has made on self-development, FDPs, faculty externships attended, MOOC certifications obtained, upskilling, membership of renowned professional bodies, chairing conferences, sessions, delivering aspects, etc. And then up to 5 bonus marks for MTech and PhD extra teaching commitment if it is over and above the prescribed teaching load. So normally what happens in a university like ours, the number of PhD scholars are not very many. This may apply even to individual colleges too. So therefore, if you are giving a pre-PhD course where only one student is attending your class, we do not count it as equivalent to a course being taught where 100 students are attending. But then, if somebody has involved in that pre-PhD coursework of 1 or 2 students, then extra points are given into this. So based on that, out of 100 points, 45 points are given to teaching learning effectiveness, and this score is given. Then comes the research. Now research again is very measurable. For example, what you have done, uh, whether one must highlight in bold his or her name in sequence the number of authors, and whether you are a corresponding author. So your name is, if you are more than one author, your name is written in bold so that we know you are contributed. The sole author will get full marks. Multiple authors will get discounted marks. What's happening today? The number of authors in papers have been increasing substantially, maybe partly due to collaborative research, partly because of the manipulative research, and therefore what we have done here, a very fair assessment, that if there are multiple authors, then each author will get the recognition for each paper is 1 upon root n, if n is number of authors. So suppose there are 2 authors on a paper, each one would get 0.7, 70% weightage. If there are 3 authors, you'll get 0.57 each. If there are 4 authors, they'll get 50% weightage. If you have 5 authors, 0.45. If you have 6 authors, 0.40. So it's a win-win, and therefore as a result, this model even takes care of the contribution by individual faculty member in multiple authors' papers. Otherwise, what's happening? There will be a lot of double accounting. 3 faculty members, each one will get recognition for research. So it's a very powerful model, and this is our innovation. Then papers published in unpaid peer-reviewed journals only. We don't count papers which are published in paid journals. And unpaid, only unpaid peer-reviewed papers are counted. Journal publications, Scopus, in a Web of Science, Google Scholar, and Indian Citation Index or UGC will be considered. Conference proceedings in Scopus and Web of Science, Google Scholar, and ICI will only be considered, and only published work is to be considered. That means, from 1st July to 30th June is the assessment period. Only published papers during this period or papers presented in conference during this, we have to draw the line. Papers in the pipeline or papers which are accepted will not be counted now. When a paper gets published next year, it will be counted out. A paper submitted, so communicated, accepted are not counted. Only published work or presented conference proceedings. Research impact. For annual citation increase, if suppose your number of citations per year increasing, if your citations increase beyond 15 citations per year, you get 2 marks. If between 5 to 14 citations, 1 mark, and if you are only less than 5 citations per year are contributed, you get no marks on this. Faculty member to carry the copy of the published paper along with details of the reviewers' comments. Then, like this, we give again, marks are given on research. Web of Science, Scopus Index papers, 5 points. Google Scholar, ICI, 3 points. Cumulative number of increase in citation annually excluding self-citation, 2 points. Conference proceedings, index and Scopus, Web of Science, 2 points. Conference presentations, 1 point. Then books, chapters in books. The books published 5 points in international books, 3 points in national books. Book chapters, because these are all contributions that faculty members are making. So our performance appraisal has tried to capture all of them. The whole idea is to capture whatever contribution the faculty member has made. So even the book chapters, case writings indexed in scope, Web of Science, a Google Scholar, with ISBN or without ISBN, and articles and blogs, unindexed journals. Suppose you publish in an unindexed journal. That means not cited by Google Scholar anywhere. Even there we give some weightage, but that weightage is much less. So articles, blogs, unindexed journal publications 0.5, and we give a total score out of 12, like this. Then uh, uh, PhD guidance, scholar details, name of the PhD scholar, date of the registration, etc. Progress of the scholar in SRC. For example, you may be having 10 students. Of course, you can't. You know that the UGC limit is 4 students, PhD scholar, you are assistant professor, 6 if you are associate professor, and 8 if you are a professor. And suppose they are not progressing, so we also get progress of the scholar SRC ratings, essay student research committee, total number of research publications of the scholar in this. PhD synopsis submitted, PhD thesis defended, and then we get a score out of 8. Then sponsored research and funding, ongoing project progress, PI, co-PI, number, amount of funding received, etc. New project funded, proposal submitted, appraisal score. Then we give details of state and participant. This MDPs and FDPs conducted. Details of the status of the number of participants, duration, outcomes, net income generated is again FDPs. And then now these are the 15 marks given from the outcome-based involvement in the university's affairs in terms of academic administration. And then Central Appraisal Committee gives 5 marks based on perception. Now we have also included in this structure, the faculty member must also be able to express his or her difficulties faced in the process. So we have given a feedback mechanism where the faculty concerned gives suggestions, whether any assistance or required suggestions from the department university is required for your professional growth. So give 1, 2, 3 suggestions. Suggest any ideas for improving any aspect of our department. How can we improve as a department? What are the difficulties? So that here we give a forum to the faculty concerned. This is not a one-way process. Even a faculty member can say that my work was not encouraged by the HOD, or I was not given adequate funding or whatever. So here is a place of forum available for a faculty member to express himself or herself in terms of what kind of assistance one needs to further enrich the professional growth. And then the appraiser. Again, here, it's a very, very thoughtfully worked out. Many times what happens, that is the appraiser, that means HOD or dean concerned or the director or the vice chancellor, as the case may be. For professors, there is the principal and the vice chancellor. For associate professor, up to the HOD. Many times, in order to ensure that there is a minimum possible, biased assessment on the part of appraiser, we force the appraiser to highlight 3 major strengths of every individual and 3 major areas for improvement in every individual. So that it's not that for someone he favors only gives a strength, and for someone else he only writes weaknesses. So here we say that every individual has strengths and weaknesses, which we must use. So at least 3 major strengths in every faculty member must be listed by the appraiser, and at least 3 areas where he or she must improve. And therefore, this way, the appraiser is expected to be as objective as one can. Then based on that, then we also have a mid-year assessment, because mid-year assessment is done by the appraiser. And now then we give a checklist. Out of this checklist of activities, we give a checklist that you involve yourself in these activities. For example, project guiding under incubation center, MOU signed. How do you contribute to the outreach and contribution to the department? You choose, and based on this, a final score. The final score, as I mentioned, that this is a score to be used by the Central Appraisal Committee, which comprises of the pro chance. In fact, currently we are going it. Tomorrow on 19th, I would have again from 2 o'clock till 6 o'clock, and 22nd will be final day. So we give half an hour time, 20 minutes to half an hour. If a member expresses, because we also know when a person comes in front of the Central Appraisal Committee, one can easily make out whether the appraiser's score and NBF's different. So this puts a pressure even on the HODs to be more fair and objective, because whatever they say is not going to be accepted. It comes as one of the inputs. So that on teaching effectiveness, 45 out of 45 appraiser has given, the committee can give the written score. On research front, publications 12 marks, research guidance 8 marks, sponsored research 5 marks. We given low weightage to sponsored research because in private universities, private colleges, you are not fortunate enough to get a large funding. Then consulting assignments, 10 MDPs, P10s, 10 marks, outreach, academic management, and other 15 marks. And 5 marks we have given to the overall perception of the Central Appraisal Committee. This is primarily to see that since there are going to be grades later on, from outstanding, excellent, outstanding to good to fair, if the committee together feels that somewhere, so what we do, each individual member of the Central Appraisal Committee gives a score, and these scores are averaged out so that individual biases get averaged out, in which the appraiser is one of the constituent components. He has given his marks as one of those 6 people or 5 people, and we take an average, and that average is then written, and then on the basis of that, this is the range. If the score range is between 85 and above, it's outstanding. The score range is between 80 to 84, it's excellent. The score range is between 70 to 79, it's very good. Between 60 to 69 is good. Between 50 to 59 is satisfactory. And 49 and below, we call it marginally satisfactory. We don't call it unsatisfactory, we call it marginally. So then this is how it works, and it's been working for years now, and fairly well. But then what do we do with it? In Roorkee, I could do it only by giving them a dinner. Here we give them money as well. So the process is followed is like this. If your performance is marginally satisfactory, that means 49 and below, then we put a faculty member. If he is not confirmed, if he is on probation, then his probation is extended, because we need not hurriedly confirm him. Or he could be on watch list. We'll watch him for another 6 months or another 1 year. Try to improve it. But if you are in satisfactory between 50 to 59, then you get your 3% pay rise, as you get in any government organization. 3% increase in your emoluments are given, and between 50 to 59, you get satisfactory, 3% raise in your salary. If you are marginally satisfactory, then no raise, but you are put on the watch list. But we don't sack a person. But you are between 60 to 69, your performance is good, you get 10%, what we call it discretionary allowance. Over and above 3% pay rise, you get 10% discretionary allowance. Your pay goes up by 10%. If you're between 70 to 79, we give you 15% pay rise. And it's between 80 to 84, we give you 20% discretionary allowance. And if you're outstanding, we are liberal. In fact, we have not come across many people in that category so far. Mostly it ends up with excellent and so. But then if you're outstanding, perhaps we don't put any limit to. We can give an additional, lump sum assessment. So this is how the model works. It's participative, involving everyone, including the self-assessment, peer assessment, committee assessment, and top management involvement, and giving a person an opportunity to explain the difficulties one has faced, and also appear before the top management committee, so that together we can come to a conclusion. And this score is known to him. It's not annual confidential report. The overall score is known to him, and in areas where you are weak, you ought to improve. Because the purpose of performance appraisal system is to help you improve and guide. Now, this is what is the impact of the first performance appraisal system. Now, if there are any questions on it, I can take up them. Otherwise, I'll now move to the second part, which is the student feedback. and later I'll comment on this too. Are there any comments on or questions to be raised at this point in time on the performance appraisal system and teaching learning process, the shift in the teaching learning paradigm in current times compared to the traditional system that I talked about?
No, no,
Teaching
sir, not
effectiveness and faculty performance appraisal system.
not many questions, sir.
Okay, fair enough. Then in that case, I'll now move forward. I'll talk about the student feedback. Now, in our system, the student feedback takes place in every course, in every semester, in absolutely anonymous online confidential mode. That means the student doesn't know that he would be known as whatever. So it's totally anonymous, online, compulsory student. So the keywords here are compulsory, anonymous, and online. And that's analyzed, and the scores are given to the faculty member concerned, and that score is used in the performance appraisal system that I shared with you. So there's nothing confidential about it, and this is used in the overall assessment of the faculty member concerned. But there's only a limited weightage. We don't give 100% weightage to student feedback. There are gaps in it, and students sometimes are not very mature to give, and there are malpractices that also happen in this. I'll share some of these concerns. Now, this is the format of our student feedback in my current place. Later on, I'll tell you the student feedback system that happens in IT Delhi, where I also teach. And there I have a recently filled up student feedback for a coursework. So we do, for example, the name of the faculty member, the course title, course code, theory, tutorial, practical, semester, and this is all anonymous and compulsory. Now, compulsory, although personally I do not believe in making things compulsory, but some degree of nudging is required. The students are, because you have made them anonymous, they just don't know that whatever they write is going to be identified to him. Nobody can find out who gave what, and yet perhaps they do not feel very comfortable. In order to give that, because there's a crisis of confidence in the society that we have, but we have made it compulsory to the extent that unless they give the student feedback, and since anonymous, we will not let them sit in the examination. Of course, I mean, this is a kind of a nudge, but we normally do not follow it. That uh, you know, I mean, we are not cruel. Idea is to encourage them to respond fully, and yet many of them do not fill up. So what we done here again, 5-point Likert scale. This is a wonderful model. These are the questions that the faculty feedback about the way teacher is teaching. This is the student marginal, satisfactory, good, very good, excellent. Again on a 5-point Likert scale. Now there are 10 questions that we ask these students to comment on the teacher. Oral communication and presentation skill is very important. In fact, as I said, a great teacher requires to be brilliant academic profile and uh, and maybe a great communication skill. So oral communication skill, what is it? Has enabled closed captioning. Okay. Therefore, the oral communication skill and presentation is an important requirement of a teacher. So from marginal to excellent, they take use of audio visual aids, availability and readiness of the LMS on time. LMS is learning management systems. Is in our system, it's important for every faculty member to give LMS for each course for on time, and therefore use of audio visual aids availability. I mean, our entire teaching learning process is 100% audio visual aids, 100% on using PPTs and blended learning. So, did the teacher use audio visual aids availability, or those aids were available? Readiness, depth of discussion and problem solving through examples. Does a teacher give, the depth of discussion that takes place and focus on problem solving by giving relevant examples from that subject or that area? Class interaction and participation, course content enhancement and coverage. Did you cover the entire course or simply took up those topics which you have put questions you have set in the examination and that's it? So course content enhancement. Did you enrich the course content over the years? Out of class consultation. It's important. Many times, some shy students don't ask questions in the classroom, and if they approach the teacher outside the classroom, he or she, how does she respond to that? Out of class consultation. Fair evaluation of test and assessment. Is a teacher is fair in assessing a teacher, because the fairness is as important a component of teacher's profile. So fairness in evaluating in the test, in the assignments, correlation between theory and practical. And if in the practical laboratory session and the theory there ought to be strong correlation. But the practicals have no relationship with what is being taught in the class. It will get reflected here. The class conduction as per timetable. Do you undertake classes on time? Uh, do not bunk classes. Do not come late or go early or whatever. And the overall feedback on attitude and inspiration. As I said, role of a teacher is to be inspiring. So the students also comment overall on the attitude and the inspiring personality of the teacher concerned. And then every student fills up this form. We carry out, the frequency analysis. It's meticulously analyzed automatically. Very detailed analysis is done, and the range, maximum, minimum range, your university average, your average, everything is given, and over the time series. And therefore, this is the format in which analysis takes place. This then, in addition, we also talk about the not the teacher feedback, the course feedback. How about the course content? This may help in improving the course content later on. The course feedback and the program feedback. Is the course content adequate in view of the contact hours? Maybe that your course is too light or too heavy. And yes, no, maybe. Is any previous knowledge required to understand this course? So can we show that if there is a previous knowledge required is yes, then we should make that course as prerequisite. So this information would help us in making courses prerequisite or increasing or decreasing the course content to keep in touch with the contact hour. So primarily this is a feedback from students to revisit our course content. Is the course material available in library? Do we have books, LMS, etc.? Are the practicals, workshops, and industrial visits adequate? Would you, now this is another very powerful, and this to me is one of the maybe even a litmus test of the student feedback. And this question asked, would you like to take another course given by the same teacher? And if the answer to this question is yes, indirectly it validates the teacher's profile. And if the entire class, since we only do frequency analysis here, let's say out of 60 students, if all the 60 say that yes, we would like to take this course from the same teacher again, it makes something about that teacher. And if all the 60 people say, no, we'll not like to take this course again from this teacher ever, makes a difference. And of course, maybe somewhere in between. And this way, course and program feedback is taken. Then we also list some positive aspects and some areas of improvement for the faculty. So what are the plus point of the faculty that they see? And we don't use the word weakness, we use the word area for improvement. And so based on that, every individual student is given an opportunity. We of course capture, and it then is captured in unedited form is given to the faculty concerned. This is the model of student feedback system that we use. And later, of course, I'll comment on the effectiveness feedback to later on, but let me first give you the format. Now, this is the format that IIT Delhi follows. And it's a field format, and it's analyzed format. The format I gave was the format that we are following in my university. Now, this is for a typical course in IIT Delhi, the most recent one, and analyzed one, give the overall. Now, the point here again, the 5-point Likert skills are used. No opinion, poor, average, good, very good, excellent. And again, on a 5-point rating scale, then these are 10 questions are asked here. on the course organization and delivery. Did the course content met course objectives adequately? On that, they'll say no opinion, poor, average, good, very good, excellent. And then based on that, overall rating will come. Because the course content is very important in Fifteen called it uh, very good. 17 called it excellent. Now, this is a real input. It's not imaginary input. It's a real input of a particular class. Now, some very interesting insights you can see from here. It also speaks about the tremendously diverse population in the IIT system that we have in teaching learning process. Because of the various uh, uh, quotas through which we have to fill up our. So the typical profile of a classroom is fairly diversified. Now, of course, it has a strength, but it gets reflected in the student. For example, imagine if 17 people are calling a teacher excellent, 15 are calling him very good, and 15 are calling him good, or one of them is calling him poor, and 6 of them are not interested in giving an opinion. So this actually reflects, and that's why it's important how do you make out of this score. It does not need to be it gives an input, but it gives enormous input about the heterogeneity that prevails in a classroom and the dilemma that a teacher has now, even in fairly reputed institution, at whose wavelength he or she should start teaching. Are you addressing people who are outstanding, or are you addressing people who are slow learners? And unfortunately, we do not have a separate attention to be given to slow learners. We ought to give that. The IT system should learn from it. To me, this reflects a fairly mixed profile of the audience, the students' profile. But then, nevertheless, these 10 questions are how clearly was the course plan presented? How effectively, third question was, how effectively could the teacher communicate? How much did the teacher encourage independent thinking? How much did the teacher encourage logical thinking? How receptive was the teacher to question inside and outside the classroom? How were the lectures organized in terms of clarity and presentation of concepts, learning? This was the teaching part, and the learning part was how effective was the teachers in keeping your interest alive in the coursework? How much did the course help you to learn the subject? Uh, and then examination, that's about teaching learning. Then about the course examination and evaluation. Did the evaluation help you to understand your mistakes? Did the examination test understanding of the coursework? Were the evaluated answers given shown to you? No, we have a system. I forgot to tell you that we also in my current university have that system. Basically, since I've been in IIT Delhi for almost 55 years now, many of the practices from IIT Delhi I have borrowed, and so we show all the answer books to our students in the midterm as well as annual examination. So there's a complete transparency, and it also puts a pressure on teacher to be fair in assessment of the students. So therefore, did the examination test understanding the course? So this even I didn't mention in my current university. There also we show answer books mandatorily. If the dates are given, the class is this is the schedule of showing your answer books. And if there are any errors, some question remains unanswered, etc., unevaluated also. So here also we did the examination test understanding of the course. Were the evaluated answer books shown to you? Were the question papers for appropriate length? Then some general question. Did the teacher take note of mid-semester feedback? How would you rate the workload of this course? Was the attendance policy announced at the beginning of the semester? Was the course evaluation policy announced at the beginning of the semester? Was there a significant variation among the different lecture sections? Were the lectures held on time? Were the lectures held regularly? These are general kind of questions. Therefore, this is how it works out. And But then you can see that a fairly large number. This, in fact, I'll now comment on the effectiveness of the student feedback. You can see even in IT system, 13 people have no opinion, 4 are answering no, and uh, like this, you can see fairly a heterogeneous population. Now, having said this, now let me uh, maybe I can now stop sharing the uh, and interact with you now. Now, what I've shared with you is the mechanism of faculty feedback, the student feedback, and the process of being transparent, objective, measurable, because any student feedback or any faculty performance appraisal system has to follow these characteristics: multidimensional, participative, measurable, on time, and transparent, objective. Because if these attributes are not there, a performance appraisal can inspire more suspicion as worse than not having it. Therefore, if you really want to inspire confidence in your performance appraisal system, make it objective and should be perceived to be fair. You may say, as a head of the institution, that it's fair. The person concerned must perceive it to be fair. So, therefore, a fair, objective, transparent, participative, and multi-dimensional, multi-attribute is a multi-criterion evaluation of the performance of a teacher, both by students as well as the institution. And if it is implement, and then the idea is to improve and not to punish. The spirit behind performance appraisal, the spirit behind student feedback. In fact, I've been told by some of the faculty members who appear for interviews in my university, we ask them, do you have a student feedback? I say, yes, sir, we have it. What is it? They say, we don't know. Have it been shared with you? No, they don't share with you. If you don't share the student feedback with the teacher, it does not inspire confidence. Then you are using it by manipulating. At times you want to throw out somebody, you say student feedback was bad. That's not the way to use. These are instruments that I've shared today are very valuable instruments for enriching the quality of teaching learning process, in enhancing the teaching effectiveness, and must be used for that purpose. And therefore, idea is not to punish people. Idea to develop, nurture them, and it can only happen if there is a fair, honest, objective, and compassionate understanding of the entire mechanism. And if you do so, my own experience has been is doing wonders in transforming same teacher. As I mentioned in Roorkee, when the 44 star performers on first year to 90 star performers in the third year of my implementation of fourth year, 4 years I implemented it after 5 years. So gradually we must make every teacher into a star. And if you can do that, the head of the institution is doing a great job. The idea, therefore, of performance appraisal. Now we must also look at sometimes the student feedback system has, see, all these mechanisms are great if they are done honestly. Sometimes the student feedback system has not delivered very effectively. Maybe even faculty performance appraisal depends upon the honesty of appraisers.
Hello.
Now, many times students are not that matured and objective in assessing a good teacher for the time being. For example, it's what has been told, been perceived, that a good teacher who's very honest in assessment, reasonably disciplined, very fair, may not get highly appraised by students who are not very highly performing. Many times, a teacher who is very loose, very relaxed, very liberal in grading, and very flexible in, may initially get a fairly high score. Therefore, to me, while you implement the student feedback system, it's important to build up, and maybe you can enrich it. The percentage, for example, if a student has only attended 30% class, he may not give good feedback to a teacher. So therefore, maybe to some extent, a weighted analysis, weighted average, only those students who have done attended major classes, and those students who have reasonably good degree of accomplishment in their academic score, perhaps if their information may count more than the information of those students who never attended classes. But some of the negative aspects of student feedback that I've come across in some places, maybe it's only hearsay, that sometimes in order to please the students to give a good feedback to the teacher, a teacher may take them for a dinner or for a picnic outside to please them. These are dysfunctional aspect of the almost. So therefore, and for that the management of the institution must not take student feedback to that degree of it's not a gospel truth. There are disruptions in it. There are deviations in it. There are distortions in it for a variety of reasons. So take it with a pinch of salt, because the people who are appraising you may not necessarily be very objective in doing so. Sometimes they may not be even serious. I've come across situations where they fill up the feedback in a group. ओके भाई इसमें कौन सा टिक करना है, इसमें कौन सा टिक करना है, इसमें कौन सा टिक करना है. अगर उस सीरियसनेस से अगर फीडबैक नहीं भरा जाएगा, and you take it that seriously, perhaps not done. So by all means use it, have it, but interpret it with a pinch of salt, because the people filling it up may not be necessarily in that seriousness and that objectivity with which you take it, and that's where. But then it does give us an idea. And of course, in addition to this, there are some unedited comments as well. For example, if somebody, even an outstanding teacher, if some individual student comments on it, he's a lousy teacher, since it's now it does put you, but then take it a pinch of salt, because don't upset yourself that you think you are a great teacher and somebody has been unkind in commenting on you. There my personal philosophy has been, control on somebody else's perception. So if he's an odd man out, then they ignore it. And that's why the only way of interpreting the student feedback is not an individual student's comment, but the overall average feedback. Because the beauty of average is that the individual biases get averaged out, and therefore it's the statistical analysis and interpretation of the student feedback that's more important than the individual comments. Because you can see, if 17 people are calling it excellent and one person is calling him poor, somewhere somebody is wrong, and 17 people can't be wrong, and therefore treat it with a pinch of salt. That's my interpretation, because many times the management of the private organizations misuse the student feedback system to take care of a non-compliant teacher. And secondly, whatever this feedback, share it with the teacher concerned. What performance appraisal, share with the teacher concerned. Any appraisal not shared does not inspire confidence, and any appraisal system that does not inspire confidence is not worth having. That's all I had to say, and maybe I now leave it to you. If there are comments and questions, observations, I'm open to it. Otherwise, that's it.
Thank you, sir. That was really very wonderful. Before I request our principal ma'am to speak, I will read out the questions that have been posted by the participants.
Yeah.
We have Mr. Kabia sir, who is making a comment that the core motivation for research should be real life problems, and real life problems are faced by those in the industry, whereas most of the teachers are doing research just for publishing papers. So how can we address this?
Yeah, I think that's a fair observation. Actually, that's where the institute makes a difference. For example, if you look at my vision statement, our focus should be on socially relevant research outcomes. And that's why if you look at the metrics I mentioned, that 4 dimension, a teacher is doing a lot of publications, but it's a mismatch with the societal needs. I mean, that's why that metrics I started, a high quality mismatch, a good research but not relevant. The person must be told to be more relevant, and therefore industrial interaction. In fact, a great research to my mind is the one that solves the problems of the society. So taking real problems from industry, and that's why industrial interaction, involving industry in giving problems, and maybe at times if the faculty supervision from industry can also be co-supervision of the research. At least in BTech MTech project, we can have co-supervision from the industrial guides, and even for PhD if a guide is competent. But definitely, a research being done for the sake of research, for the sake of publication, which does not improve the quality of the life of society, is not that valuable. So therefore, we need to inspire our faculty members to take up meaning. That's why my university's vision statement, part of the vision statement is to undertake socially relevant research outcomes. Take problems which would help in improving the quality of life of the common people, and not extending the research topics of American professors, which many times have a tendency to do so, and many times insisting on publishing in international journals. Sometimes, encourages them to take up extension of project being done in Stanford and MIT and Cambridge. We have to look at the societal issues and problems, and to me personally, an applied research relevant to the society, even if is not that. So to me, an applied research relevant to the society is, is to me is more valuable than a fundamental research, because particularly in private universities and institutions, we cannot afford to spend more time and effort on fundamental research, which may have long-term potential applications out of context, and this way research has to be contextualized. I agree with that observation.
Okay, the second
And
question is from Mr. Suman Kumar Chaudhary. He is asking that the system will maybe working better if we reduce the class strength to 30 to 35 instead of 60 to 80.
yeah, that of course is true. In fact, see what happens. Uh, the size of the class is, in my opinion, in fact, in my university, the optimal size of the class is 45, and we might have multiple sections. So you have 90 students, you have two sections of 45 each. So it's good that it's true that beyond a point, it reduces effectiveness. Uh, but then there are constraints of the teacher availability, and so what has happened in many cases, and to my mind, IITs are doing to my. I'm not, although I'm an IITian, I many times don't subscribe to that. They're having a class size of 300, a class size of 500. Their classrooms having 3 to 500. Now, a serious technical teaching cannot be done in a class of 500 people. So, in fact, of course, they have made it up through small tutorials. So, yeah, lecture is done in a large class, then followed up in small tutorials of 15 to 20. To some extent, that matches. But even in a lecture class, now only popular lecture can be given to a student of 500 people in an auditorium, but a serious mathematics or of engineering, physics or thermodynamics cannot be taught to 500 people in an auditorium. Therefore, to me, this observation is that perhaps to improve the teaching effectiveness, it's important to, and this is where the role of the top management of the institution makes a difference. Instead of economizing on a teacher, we should try to make use of that teacher in improving the quality of teaching learning process by having a fairly optimal class size. As I said, optimal class size is 45, and at best 60. Beyond that, we don't have it. And of course, small tutorial rooms are there, but small group size definitely helps to more personal attention being given to students. That to that extent is helpful. So only occasionally, but only when a single teacher, a teacher is very popular, and a lot of people want to attend his classes. Class size goes beyond 100, and only there's one teacher who can give that. So either have multiple sections for him, or else support the teacher with few associate teachers in explaining his ideas in a small tutorial on practical sessions or interactive sessions. So that has to be done on case by case situation. But it's true that the size of the classroom makes an impact on teaching effectiveness, and there is an optimal size. Beyond that, the teaching effectiveness goes down.
Thank you, sir. The next question is by Soma Banerjee, and the question is: as per AICTE guidelines, are there any marks on attending FTP, or only as organizer contribution is counted?
There are, in fact, in the faculty performance appraisal system that I mentioned, in fact, there are rules. How many FDPs have you attended? This is a part of the faculty self-development. So faculty self-development is also important because you cannot be, give the example of a lamp. Unless you are yourself lighted, you can't light others. Therefore, faculty members should also be perpetually upgrading themselves. So attending FDPs is important for the self-development of the faculty that gets counted in faculty performance appraisal system. But contributing to FDPs for others is also a part of the faculty members, so that you're enriching other faculty members in the process. So both are important. Your own contribution in conducting the FDPs for others, your own contribution in developing yourself in attending FDPs by others. Both are important.
Thank you, sir,
Okay.
for that excellent answer. The next question is again from Soma Banerjee. For practical classes where more than one faculty member is associated, how to calculate the teaching load?
Pardon? Say it again.
Like the question is like how to calculate the teaching load for practical sessions.
Yeah, in fact, the for practical session, the teaching load is computed by giving the credits. 2 hours of 2 hours of teaching load is counted as one credit. So therefore, if somebody is taking 8 hours of practical, is equivalent to somebody delivering 4 lectures. This conversion now is a part of even the credit, the national credit framework, which has now been developed. So if somebody is taking 4 hours of practical, is equivalent to giving 2 hours of lecture, or tutorial and lectures are given equal weightage. Practicals are given half the weightage. That's counted, and that's the model that we follow. I had mentioned it also, that practicals are given half the weightage compared to the lecture, because the involvement of the teacher in lecture and tutorial is far more direct and intense as compared to the involvement of the teacher in a practical, and therefore that degree of involvement must be given weightages, and the general trend is 50%, half the
Okay.
weightage.
Thank you, sir. And this is, I think, a grievance more than a query. Mr. Suman Kumar Chaudhary is saying that whatever is told is good to listen, but it gets really impossible to implement for such large strength of class and which is being faced currently.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that. That's true. You see, these whatever has been said are intended to improve the performance, but then you need to create a right environment. If you have an unmanageably large class, obviously, and expect a teacher to give a personal attention to every individual, the context is not relevant. Now, all this would be helpful if you create a right environment and right context. That's why the size of the class, the availability of the audiovisual materials, and the openness of the institution in nurturing the faculty are prerequisites. If those conditions don't exist, then it sounds good to hear. That's it. But then this is the job of the top management of the institution to create those conditions. And if you are simply, you see, I'll put it this way: the the way the top management of the institution, or the ownership of that institution, how do they look at faculty? That to me is a fundamental point. If they look at faculty as a liability, you have to pay them, make maximum use of them, exploit them fully, then they are not cut out for any professionally great job. To me, faculty is an asset. Buildings are liability. Many times we take buildings as assets and faculty as a liability. If that happens, that mindset needs to change. To me, a great teacher can perform very well even in a mediocre physical infrastructure. But in a world-class infrastructure with a third-class teacher, will not deliver. Therefore, it's high time that the top management of the institution, the ownership, give the highest respect to the teacher as a great asset. The great teachers transform, they create magic in a system. Unless we give them that degree of respect, and uh, uh, you will not get committed teachers. And if you don't get committed teachers, then what kind of respect you give, you get that same quality of teachers would come. So to me, therefore, the basic prerequisite on the part of every institution is to give the highest respect to the teacher. They must feel wanted by the system. They may feel respected by the system. I call it a psychic income. There is a limit up to which you can financially pay them. But the least you can do is to give them the highest respect and regard and autonomy and respect. And therefore, that psychic income alone would attract the best people to come and teach. If you do not create that environment and do not create an environment where a reasonable amount of work, if you have 300 students to be taught by him and you expect every 300 people to be given perfect attention, it's humanly not possible. So create a right environment that's part of the institution, and then perhaps these models might work.
Okay, the
Okay.
next question is asking you, Professor Premraj sir, is research an individual's interest or is it mandatory from UGC AICTE organization?
Uh, you see, when if it is in a school teaching, yes, it is the individual's interest. For higher education, teaching and research are two sides of the same coin. Therefore, and that's what is reflected in the, so for example, if you still consider teaching a sole responsibility, only role is teaching, then what's the difference between school teaching and university teaching? University teaching and school teaching have larger number of hours compared to. Therefore, in a higher education, teaching and research are two sides of the same coin. Of course, it depends upon the relative weightages. For in IIT, for example, the research is an extremely important component of teaching, in addition to teaching. That's why in Roorkee, the teaching was 35%, research was 30%. But in a private university or a private college, teaching is 45%, research is 20%. The weightage can be less, but in higher education, there is a role involved for everyone. This is what is expected. Now comes to the question what you do. Now, fair enough as a teacher, if you enjoy being a teacher alone and not like to do research, be happy with your appraisal when it comes to marginally satisfactory or just satisfactory. So you can't simply ignore research and expect an outstanding grade. Therefore, there has to be some degree of compromise in your expectations that you're only doing teaching and nothing else. Then whatever score will come, perhaps if 45% weightage to teaching and another 15% weightage to academic management, that means you are being assessed out of 60%. And if you're an outstanding teacher and a great administrator, you will definitely be considered to be worth continuing as a, but in the range of getting 3% pay rise as a satisfactory performance. But if you want to outshine and become an outstanding teacher, you have to be a good researcher as well. So compromise with your assessment if you can't do research. To me, a good teacher and good researcher go hand in hand. For example, just to let you know, I have, I produced 50 PhDs so far, 108. I have never stopped teaching. When even I was a director in IIT Delhi, I directed in IIT Roorkee as vice chancellor, as in ITM, in UPTU, as a pro chancellor, virtually a part of the ownership. Although I'm not an owner, they're nice enough to make me a pro chancellor. Normally, people make their family members a pro chancellor. It's a respect they have given to me, but I still teach there. I guide research. I publish papers. Therefore, if you really want to your own interest, if you want to be known to the society, because a best teacher is known within the boundary lines of the institute, a great researcher is known throughout the world. So therefore, it depends upon your level of expectations from you. If you want to outshine and become an outstanding people, the whole world should know you, then be a great teacher and a great researcher, but not a great researcher at the cost of being a great teacher. To me, that priority is very clear. You have to be a great teacher first, and later on, researcher. Great research, not the cost of teaching. Great consultancy, not the cost of research and teaching. And this way, the relative reduced weightages are important in this. And if you can be outstanding in all of them, you need to be star. And you ought to be recognized as a star. Not everyone can be a star. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir. That was really excellent.
Great.
There are many more questions, but I think we are running out of time. So,
Great.
sir, I just request you to please unmute VJIT website. You can find it in the
Okay.
participants.
Yeah, I have I unmuted that. Okay. Have Have I not unmuted VGITs? I have unmuted them. Okay. Hello?
Uh, I just want that to be unmuted, sir. VGIT website. In the participant list, you have it.
In the participants list, I entered doing whatever I could do. VGIT website. Okay,
Yes.
unmuted. All right. I'm not able to. I'm not able to unmute VGIT website.
Okay.
I'm trying to unmute. It's not getting unmuted at my level. Maybe that it has to be controlled at your level. And since I have stopped sharing, maybe you can revert back to control yourself and
Okay.
take
Okay,
care.
sir. Okay, sir.
Because I'm not able to unmute yourself from my level.
Uh,
You take control of
yes,
the
sir. I have
situation
taken
and
the
unmute
control,
yourself.
sir. I'll request them to take unmute them, sir. Unmute themselves, sir. I request
All right.
Principal Ma'am, Dr. A.
Good day,
Padmaja
madam.
Ma'am to, Ma'am, you're
Okay.
audible, Ma'am. I request Principal Ma'am
Yeah.
to propose the vote of thanks.
Uh, Good afternoon, sir. It was an
Good
excellent
afternoon.
session on how
Good
to
afternoon.
appraise teaching and learning mechanisms. And thank you very much, sir, for the detailed explanation how to calculate the appraisal weightage and it is especially in the research domain. You have explained it very well. Then how to take the weightages of different Scoopers and other related papers and making us understand the multidimensional roles and responsibilities of the teachers. And it is very true that this learning is more democratic now and increasing the responsibility of the teachers. Further, to enhance their skills, faculty should be more participative to become the role models and star performers and to be noticed and appraised by the administration.
Yeah.
And regarding the second part of the session on student feedback, also you have given excellent session, and also the calculation part, and some of the questions raised by the participants, like in a small classroom we can do it, but if it is a large number of because we have a strength of 60 in the class, and also 14 sections will be there, including all the branches of the departments. And we'll definitely follow the guidelines and tips given by you. And also, we would request you to share that PPT so that everyone will be.
I'll do that. I'll do that.
And also, the format you said you'll be sharing with all the participants, the faculty appraisal form,
Yeah, yeah,
and
I'll
also.
do that. Whatever I've said, I'll be sharing that. I'll give it to you.
Oh,
I'll
thank
give
you,
it
sir.
to
Thank you very much.
and you
And
can. Great.
thank you
Thank
very much for
thank
all
you
the
very much.
participants.
Okay. Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much for all the participants for joining this session. Very interesting session. And we are planning the third session on 30th December on the title of Development of Academic Leadership Strategy and Nurturing Academic Leadership Change. This is the third session we are planning on 30th December.
Okay.
And thank you
Good.
very much,
Thank
sir,
you.
once
Thank
again.
you very much. And I think I'll log off now. Thank you very much for kind attention that you've given to me. And let's hope that it is relevant to the participants. I'll share those PPTs subsequently. Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir.
Great.
And most
Yeah,
of the
this
participants also have
yeah.
conveyed their gratitude, thanking you for this wonderful session.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm grateful to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We can log off now. Thank you. Thank you all the participants for making this event successful.
Recording stopped.